we're going to talk about some things to consider whenever you are choosing a major and career. And we're going to be using this diagram that I created. There are basically 7 different points that I wanted to cover. So I used a 7-point star, just like Game of Thrones, if you're a fan. And then there's one thing that encompasses all of that. So we're going to go through all 8 of those points now. So we'll start at the top of the star at 12 o'clock. We're going to talk about values. Values are what's important to you and why. So you need to think about that when you're thinking about your major and career, because these are decisions that impact you for the long term, right? So you want to think about what's important to you. What do you value? Do you value lots of free time? Or do you value a really set schedule with a lot of predictability? Do you value making a whole lot of money and being very well off economically? Or do you value the freedom to express yourself and just be who you are? What are those things that are important to you, right? Does it have to do with lifestyle? Does it have to do with spirituality? Does it have to do with family? Does it have to do with politics? Does it have to do with the environment? Whatever it is, those things that you value, you need to take those into consideration when you're choosing your major and career pathway. Next thing we're going to talk about is interests. What holds your attention for a prolonged period of time and over a considerable amount of time? Now, for example, when you were 8 years old, you might have really been interested in Power Rangers. But now that you're 19 or 20 years old, you might not be so much interested in Power Rangers. However, if you are, that's something for you to think about. You think about, okay, when I was 8 years old, I really loved the Power Rangers, and I'm still really, really into Power Rangers. Why is that? Is it because you like superheroes and sci-fi and fantasy type programs? Is it because you are really into the martial arts? Is it because of the things that each one represented? What was it about that captured your interest? So when you think about your interest, think about those things that can hold your attention for a prolonged period of time, and not just in the present moment, but maybe for a considerable amount of time in your life that has been an interest that's been with you. Next, we'll talk about personality. Now, there's a lot of theories about personalities, and some theorists say your personality is hardwired in your brain and it's not changeable. Other people say, no, your personality can change throughout your lifespan. Regardless of what you believe about personality, it all has to do with how you express yourself and how others perceive you. For example, if you perceive yourself as a shy person and an introvert, then other people are probably going to perceive you that way, probably, because you may not be very talkative, or you may be a little standoffish, or keep to yourself, or not enjoying big social gatherings or something. It's really important for you to consider your personality when you choose a major and career, because if you end up stuck in a job someday, in a role that's not a good fit for your personality, then you're going to go to work feeling pretty miserable every day. So think about your personality preferences. Are you more of an introvert or more of an extrovert? Do you show the world who you are, or do you keep it all to yourself? Do you energize yourself by being with other people, or do you energize yourself with some alone time? Or are you somewhere in the middle, right? Most of us are probably somewhere in the middle. We're not usually at the extremes, but we'll have a preference for one or the other. Are you the type of person that likes to gather information about the world based on what you see and what you hear and what you experience for yourself? Or are you the type of person that does it on a more intuitive level, where you're listening to other people's stories and you're making connections between events and people and the past and the present and things like that? When it comes to the way you think, are you more of a logical, rational kind of decision maker, or are you the kind of person who's thinking about how other people might feel about it and how it's going to affect relationships? Those are things that you need to take into consideration whenever you're choosing your major and career, so that you end up in a role that's a good fit and a good match for all of that. The next thing is experience. It's important for you to think about the significant or memorable things that you've done in your life. Now, if you're a young person, maybe you're thinking, well, I haven't really done anything. Well, obviously you have. If you've lived any amount of time on this planet, then you've accomplished something. You finished middle school, you finished high school, you learned a language, you mastered a musical instrument, you went on a really, really long hike, you earned your Eagle Scout badge, you did this or that or the other, whatever it was. You have accomplished things. And the things that you have accomplished can sometimes inform the kind of person you are so that you can think about majors and careers that might align well with your previous experiences, especially those that are significant to you or memorable to you. If it stands out to you and it's a pleasant memory or pleasingly significant, then that's really an experience that you should take into consideration. The next thing we're looking at is knowledge. What do you know? And how do you know it? Right? Now, it's important that we distinguish between knowledge and opinion. All right? Um, it is my opinion that there is life on other planets, that we are not alone in the universe here on Earth. But that's just an opinion. I have no knowledge of life on other planets. If I did, I would either be the most famous person on Earth right now, or I would be hunted down and put in prison so I wouldn't share that information with anybody, right? So there's a difference between knowledge and opinion. What do you know and how do you know it? Those pieces of knowledge that are in your head, it might seem trivial to you, but for example, if you are really good at remembering who won the Super Bowl in 2003, and if you know all the stats of all the Major League Baseball players of your favorite team, keeping track of things like that could inform your ability to manage details and understand statistics. Okay. So think about what you know and how you know it too. The next thing is a really big consideration. This is needs. Okay. What kind of lifestyle do you have? What kind do you want to have? And very important consideration, who else are you responsible for besides yourself? When you make your major and career decisions, you may be making decisions that are impacting not only you, but other people as well. And if that's your case, maybe you don't have to think about other people, but if you do, it's important to think, if you're going to have to take care of younger siblings or elderly parents or something like that, you need to think about decisions that will impact them as well. So think carefully about your economic needs, your other material needs, and all of the things that you have going on in your life that might require your attention that have nothing to do with any of the other things that we've talked about so far. The seventh thing on the star is skills. What are you able to do now, and what do you want to learn to do? So what you want to learn to do is probably connected to your interests and your prior experiences and your knowledge or your values. For example, if you value um, being very internationally minded and bringing peace in the world, then a skill that you might want to learn is a new foreign language, right? So think about not only what you're able to do now, but what you would like to learn to do. And when you're thinking about what you're currently able to do, if it's something that you enjoy, if it's a skill that you don't mind using, then that's an important consideration. But if it's a skill that you don't enjoy, I mean, I'm good at vacuuming, but I don't want to vacuum floors for a living. I'm good at math, but I would be utterly and completely miserable if I had to do math all day long every day in my job. Think about the skills that you enjoy using, the skills that at the very least you don't mind using them because you're good at it and you recognize that and you can find some benefit in utilizing that skill. So you have to take assessment of your skills. So just to recap the seven points of the star, we've got values, those things that are important to you and why. We've got interests, the things that you're interested in now or have been interested in for quite a while. You've got your personality preferences, the way you express yourself and the way other people perceive you. You've got your experiences, and those are the significant and memorable experiences you've had in your life. You've got knowledge, pieces of information that you store in your head. How do you know it? And is it information or is it an opinion? Separate the difference between knowledge and opinion. Needs, these are your economic needs, material needs, familial needs, and other things like that. And finally, your skills, the things that you are able to do and the things that you want to learn to do, and skills that you wouldn't mind using on a daily basis in a role. Now, encompassing all of that is something that touches on all points of the star. So that's represented by the circle, and that's your culture and your identity. So what role do your affinity groups and your innate traits play in your decision making? Now, affinity groups are things like your ethnicity, your ethnic background, your race, your religious affiliation, political affiliation, um, could be a group if you're really into Dungeons and Dragons and that's a huge part of your life, that's a kind of affinity group, right? When you think about your culture, you're thinking about all of these groups, some that you were born into that you really didn't have a choice over, like your race and ethnicity, but others that you do have a choice over, like your D&D group or your political group or your religious group, because you do have a choice over those, right? And then innate traits would be those things about you that you don't really have any control over. This would be your sex, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, your height, your physical abilities, your cognitive, affective, and psychomotor uh, abilities. All of these things that are just part of who you are that you don't really choose, but it's still part of who you are. That's your identity, right? When you think about majors and careers, I think it's important to consider these things too, because these touch on the different 7 points of the stars. For example, your values are strongly influenced by your culture and your identity. What you're interested in could also be uh, influenced by culture. I lived for many years in the Republic of Korea or South Korea. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I love sci-fi, anything. But when I lived in Korea, it was hard to find Korean people who enjoyed sci-fi because they just really weren't into it culturally. It just wasn't a part of their cultural background, it wasn't part, the whole moon exploration and going to space and stuff like that just wasn't part of that. Then it might be now, I don't know. Um, your knowledge, your experience, that's a lot of times your culture and your identity have played huge roles in all of that. So think about your culture and identity in the background whenever you're considering these other things uh, about choosing a major and career, because those are important to know about.